Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning because we have a lot to cover. We've got a couple of comments from viewers over the weekend. We also have quite a few updates from last week's program and some New York State budget issues, New York State issues in general. We're going to talk tariffs. We got a lot to cover. Let's get right to it. This coming from a viewer after Friday's program. Hi, Frank. Well, hi. Been watching the touchdown and recovery of SpaceX that has historically orbited the poles on Fox Live. As I was watching it, it occurred to me to ask why the crew capsules don't just land in the desert, given that it lands in the ocean at only 16 miles per hour. Perhaps the ocean is more conducive to cooling the vessel after touching down, if this is the reason, rather than the desert. However, Elon Musk, being as intelligent as he is, I'm sure there are reasons for such touchdown that I'm not aware of. But in my mind, it should be feasible to touch down in the desert. The recovery would be much easier and cost-effective, irregardless of any cool-down period. In fact, said cool-down in the desert could be realized by spraying it with water. Should that be a mitigating apprehension for such a touchdown? Thank you. I don't have an answer for that. Elon Musk is would be a much better person to ask than me. I'm not sure the reason there. Another comment from a viewer. If you like investing in stocks, the time is now to buy. Thank you. That'll tie in with what we're going to talk a little bit later on in the program about tariffs. Comment from a different viewer. Hi, Frank. Good morning. Well, good morning. As I am jamming on my guitar, it occurred to me that high on a musician's list of priorities, but low for a non-musician, is the hopefully return of the tube to American manufacturers. In other words, tubes. Tubes that had historically manufactured in the USA are heretofore very substandard. Had to shout out someone that the manufacturing of tubes will soon be, hopefully, returning to be manufactured here in the USA by an American company once again, assuming perhaps that you enjoy the sound that emanates from a vinyl record rather than a digital CD. I do. Or perhaps you are a musician. I am not a musician. I can strum 3 chords, perhaps, on a guitar. But I understand what you're saying with tubes. And what you're saying about vinyl records, yes, much superior to CDs, and also tubes used in old-fashioned radios, which I actually have here in the studio. Comment from a different viewer. Can we possibly get Ramaswamy to run for the governor of New York? I really like his ideas. No income tax, ceiling on property taxes, industry-friendly, unfriendly to criminals, and so on. Down with Hochul, up with Ramaswamy, and all logically thinking Republicans. The problem with that is Ramaswamy is from Ohio, and he is going to be running for governor of Ohio. So we miss out on that as well, which is a shame. He would make a great governor of New York State. We're going to be talking about the governor of New York State and a little bit about the former governor of New York State in just a little bit. But first, an update from over the weekend. At least 36 more international students and recent alumni of California universities have had their visas revoked by the Trump administration as it continues to zero in on anti-Israel protesters. Stanford University and several colleges, part of the University of California system, all confirmed to NBC that members of their school communities were caught up in the ongoing crackdown that began last month with the high-profile detainment of Columbia University alum and activist Mohammed Khalil. And we're going to talk about him in a moment because he released an op-ed over the weekend. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced last month he's pulled back 300 visas from foreign students, claiming they should be kicked out of the country for causing a ruckus. That was his term. 4 Stanford students and 2 recent grads lost their visas, according to school officials, while adding that they have made external legal assistance available to them, according to the outlet. Meanwhile, 35 students and alumni of the state colleges were targeted by the Trump administration. The University of California said in a statement that the threat of deportation among students at several of its colleges is fluid. Quote, and we continue to monitor and assess its implications for the UC community and the people affected. We are committed to doing what we can to support all members of our community as they exercise their rights under the law. UC Berkeley said 2 undergrads, 2 grad students, and 2 alumni were affected, while the visas of 5 UC San Diego students and 12 people tied to UC Davis were revoked, according to NBC. UC Davis said, or reported, the federal government has not explained the reasons behind these terminations. We recognize that these actions are distressing for many in our campus community. UCLA Chancellor Julio Frank said in a campus-wide email that 6 students and 6 alumni all lost their visas. We recognize that these actions can bring feelings of tremendous uncertainty and anxiety to our community, he wrote. We want our immigrant and international UCLA students, staff, and faculty to know we support your ability to work, learn, teach, and thrive here. Now, we also learned that a March Madness star could be deported. This is coming from the Mirror out of the United Kingdom. Politics and tensions between the United States and South Sudan may lead to Kaman Malak, the Duke Blue Devils center, being deported. Saturday night saw Duke's March Madness run end in the Final Four by Houston, who produced a furious second-half comeback to defeat Cooper Flag and the Blue Devils 70-67. And amidst having to deal with the fallout of the defeat, Duke may also now need to navigate the potential deportation of Malak, who was born in Rumbek, South Sudan, following a post made by on X by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, according to an opinion piece that came out over the weekend, and I bring this up because I would love to hear your opinion. They say this Marco Rubio is unrecognizable. We can piggyback off of that last story. This is coming from Bloomberg. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele may have found the best description for Secretary of State Marco Rubio's new approach to dictatorial regimes, a laughing emoji, after a federal district judge, ordered the administration to stop a U.S. flight deporting Venezuelans to the country. Bukele wrote on X after the flight departed, "Oopsie, too late." He added the symbol known as face with tears of joy. Rubio reposted it. For many of us who have watched Rubio's career, it was wildly incongruous to see him snubbing a U.S. Corps over immigrants expelled to a brutal prison in a country ruled by an authoritarian. Rubio, a lawyer, built his political career talking about being the son of immigrants and exiles and condemning the human rights abuses in countries like Cuba. But now, as one of Trump's top lieutenants, Rubio is not only willing to partner with the aggressive and duplicitous Bukele, he has thrown his full support behind an inhumane purge of immigrants from the U.S. without due process. Now, keep in mind, again, this is a biased piece from Bloomberg, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. That's quite a shift from the Marco Rubio of 2008, when he was serving as Florida's House Speaker, the first Cuban American to hold the job. Back then, the anti-immigration fever of the Tea Party was just starting to emerge. Florida lawmakers from both parties had proposed dozens of bills, ranging from a Democratic lawmaker's plan to require police to report suspected undocumented immigrants to Republican plans to prohibit government benefits for undocumented adults. But that version of Rubio was much more sensitive to the political repercussions of an immigration crackdown. He refused to give any of the bills a hearing and told legislators he didn't want to appear anti-immigrant. 4 years later, Rubio spoke fondly of his upbringing by immigrant parents as he addressed the Republican National Convention. It's hard to imagine Rubio giving that speech today, especially after a Venezuelan man convicted of killing Georgia nursing student Laken Riley was afforded more due process than the Cuban business owner with no criminal history who was snatched from his driveway by ICE agents in Miami 2 weeks ago. The deportation tactics of today are also far from the future Rubio imagined in 2013 when he, as one of the bipartisan group of senators known as the Gang of Eight, he proposed an immigration reform plan that provided a path to citizenship for 11 million immigrants, but was never passed. And then it goes through 3 years ago, 2 years ago. But Rubio is doing the mocking now. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa, he boasted recently about canceling hundreds of visas. He has ordered his staff to scour the social media accounts of visa applicants and deport anyone guilty of creating a ruckus. It's true that the State Department has broad authority to revoke a visa from someone that they consider a threat. But according to law, it must be for very specific foreign policy reasons. Many of the foreign students caught up in Rubio's sweep have been accused of no crime and appear to have been targeted because the administration finds their pro-Palestinian speech objectionable. This, again, showing the bias from Bloomberg. We know that it is very much anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-police protest. Some have been imprisoned or denied due process. Some are permanent residents or married to U.S. citizens. And they go on to give specifics. But scholars tell me, says this author at Bloomberg, they see dangerous parallels between the Castro and Trump administration policies. They seem surprised Rubio doesn't see them too. Quote, Castro's discourse was essentially the same as Trump's, which is, if you don't agree, get out of this country. And if you're not the right kind of Cuban, then you don't belong here, said Lillian Guerrera, a professor of Cuban and Caribbean history at the University of Florida. Unless he knows something about the actual factors of the authoritarian state in Cuba, one could not understand how Marco Rubio could be endorsing these policies and be a spokesman for them. Rubio is unlikely to run for elected office again unless he runs for president, so he has turned his alliance to Trump. He is appointed to serve only one person, the president, who has cast aside multilateralism and any logic of American pluralism. And the realist school of thought believes a country's national interests are more important than its ideological underpinnings, he said. The approach allows the U.S. to expel people to a country that is known for cruel and inhumane treatment. So Fidel's torturing is bad, but if Bukele is doing it, it's good. That's why Rubio and Bukele can now share a laugh. The joke's on anyone who doesn't get it. So that's the thoughts from Bloomberg. Your thoughts on Marco Rubio and what they're calling this switch, an unrecognizable Marco Rubio. When we come back, we're going to tell you what Mohammed Khalil had to say in an op-ed he did that was dictated to the, I guess you would call, ghostwriter of the piece. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. We have a couple things here about New York State as well. We're just getting warmed up. We're just getting started. Thank you for joining us on this Monday morning edition of Frankly Speaking. We will be right back.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
Do it all with Steel Battery. Power up with free extra battery deals on select steel tools. Shop in-store and online.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
Fox Sports app isn't just any sports app. It's your sports app. Your teams, your highlights, your scores. Get more of what you want. To the end zone. Stream your teams live. It's free with your pay TV subscription.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Yes, there is a little bit of snow on the ground. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. So Muhammad Khalil dictated a letter to the Columbia Daily Spectator. Muhammad Khalil is in an ICE detention center. He was a very outspoken anti-Israel protester. He was arrested by ICE. He said, "To Columbia, an institution that laid the groundwork for my abduction, and to its student body, who must not abdicate their responsibility to resist repression. Since my abduction on March 8th, the intimidation and kidnapping of international students who stand for Palestine has only accelerated." And then he goes through and lists some people specifically. "The situation is oddly reminiscent of when I fled the brutality of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria and sought refuge in Lebanon. The logic used by the federal government to target myself and my peers is a direct extension of Colombia's repression playbook concerning Palestine. In the 18 months since the genocidal campaign in Gaza began, Colombia has not only refused to acknowledge the lives of Palestinians sacrificed for Zionist settler colonialism, but it has recently reproduced a language used to justify this killing. You received countless emails from former university president Shafiq, former interim university president Katrina Armstrong, and the deans of your schools that manufactured public hysteria about anti-Semitism without once mentioning the tens of thousands of Palestinians murdered under bombs made of your dollars. Colombia has suppressed student dissent under the auspices of combating anti-Semitism. Last year, Colombia turned over student disciplinary records to Congress and created the Task Force on Anti-Semitism that broadly categorized anti-Israel sentiment as hate speech to condemn protests. Around the beginning of Armstrong's tenure, Colombia created the Office of Institutional Equity, providing senior administration members with unilateral control over the review of the reports of discrimination and discriminatory harassment at Columbia, effectively diminishing the power of the University Judicial Board, and appointed a panel of faculty, students, and staff whose role it is to hear all charges of violations of the rules of university conduct. The movement for Palestinian freedom and justice at Columbia and across the United States has always centered community care. Hundreds of you joined the encampment last spring. Since then, many of you have stayed involved in that movement. Together, you organized mutual aid for families in Gaza through bake sales and funding campaigns. You created study spaces, reading circles, and cross-movement solidarity. This movement has always been grassroots. It was led by students, many younger than me, who risked their careers, their degrees, and their futures to demand divestment. Anyone who is truly engaged with the movement knows that claims that its goals and purpose are rooted in anti-Semitism are mere fabrication. In a cruel irony, the students who publicize manufactured safety concerns regarding anti-Semitism are the same ones who repeatedly show up at your events looking for provocation, leaving only disappointed. Some of your classmates work with faculty to run doxing platforms, submitting our names to websites and groups like Canary Mission, and turned our lives into targets. While they sit comfortably behind their screens, their actions have very real consequences for the rest of us. If I'm deprived of my child in the first moments of his life, the people responsible will have been, among others, these students. Especially in light of the dual degree program with Tel Aviv University, I can't help but think that if I were in Palestine, some of these students would be the ones stopping me at checkpoints, raiding my university, piloting the drones, surveilling my community, or killing my neighbors in their homes. While students were building solidarity at Columbia, some pro-Israel students were participating in the genocide as military personnel during their school breaks, only to return to campus and claim victimhood in the classroom. These students who have smeared and attacked us have also benefited from the mutual backing of the institution and the federal government. Unable to build a movement supported by their peers, these students met instead with right-wing members of Congress to pressure a university crackdown. Abandoning all pretense of neutrality, University Provost Angela Alinto and Armstrong also convened with the Israeli Minister of Education. Together, both coalitions pushed the weight of the federal government down on students. I ask you, who is truly at risk here? To the students who remain apathetic to Columbia's disregard for human life and its willingness to discard student safety, as pressure from the federal government intensifies, know that your neutrality on Palestine will not protect you. When the time comes for the federal government to target other causes, it will be your names that Columbia will offer on a silver platter. It will be your pleas that fall on deaf ears. It will be your just causes that are stonewalled. The institution's singular concern has always been the vitality of its financial profile, not the safety of Jewish students. This is why Columbia was all too happy to embrace a superficial, progressive agenda while still disregarding Palestine. And that is why it will soon turn on you too. This has been made clear, most recently, through the deputization of public safety officers to arrest students, the presence of New York Police Department officers and the Department of Homeland Security agents on and around campus, the increasing use of surveillance technology, and the McCarthyist and racist interventions at the Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies Department. This institution has systematically gutted every value it claims to uphold, also that may better function as an arm of the state. Well, I think we've heard just about enough of this, but this is Muhammad Khalil writing this over the weekend. I know the protests that happened on Saturday. By the way, did you see the protests on Saturday? Quite a turnout here in Corning. We'll show you a picture later on. But so too do we believe this is the highest honor of our lives to struggle for the cause of Palestinian liberation. The student movement will continue to carry the mantle of a free Palestine. History will redeem us, while those who were content to wait on the sidelines will be forever remembered for their silence. So that's Muhammad Khalil. His name used very frequently when it comes to these protests, the anti-Semitic protests happening on college campuses. Of course, he is distancing himself from that term anti-Semitic, but if you read not even between the lines and what he's saying, you see it very much at the forefront. When we come back, we're going to talk about New York State issues. I see some comments coming in. Keep them coming in. We'll read them when we come back. This is, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Advanced robotic surgery is now available in the Southern Tier. With the Da Vinci Surgical System, experienced local surgeons at UR Medicine St. James and Jones Memorial Hospitals can perform minimally invasive procedures with greater precision.
That means less pain, shorter hospital stays, and a faster recovery so you can get back to life sooner.
Trust the expertise of your local surgeons and the most advanced technology for your surgery.
You no longer need to travel for cutting-edge surgical care.
Visit robotics.urmc.edu for more information.
Your tap water is delicious.
I know, right? It's this Culligan Smart drinking water system.
What do you think is going on in there?
I'm smelling a touch of chlorine.
Yeah, I'm detecting some PFAS.
I'm also getting notes of lead.
Perfection.
Sending it up.
Here we go.
Certified to reduce more than 70 contaminants. It's like having your own team of water experts. See the smart difference at Culligan.com.
Invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
Anywhere can record crimes as they happen. and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his arm.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A couple comments here. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. The illegals didn't do due process to enter this country, so why give due process to leave this country? Good point, Mark. Thank you. Ken did the dirty work. He watched the Sunday shows, and he gives us a recap as he does on Mondays. Thank you, Ken. Ken writes, on Meet the Depressed with Kristen Welker, Welker interviewed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Welker tried to get him to say that the tariffs are going to be a long-term financial impact on consumers and retirees. He schooled her on how tariffs affect the country and told her that the retirees that the stock market's reactions to the tariffs will be short-term. She tried to get him to say we are going to have a recession. He told that the recession is not going to happen. She interviewed Republican Senator James Lankford and asked him mostly the same questions with similar responses. She interviewed Democrat Senator Adam Schiff. He said Trump is all wrong on the tariffs. Trump doesn't care about the country or the people. He is hurting the country with everything he does, and he is going to put us into a recession. She asked him about Biden's cognitive decline not being reported. He really didn't answer and pivoted to the Trump's lawlessness hurting the country. And she is with every Democrat that talks bad about President Trump and his administration. Welker was happier than a pig in poop, that old saying, with Schiff's response to her question. I haven't heard that saying in a long time. Thank you, Ken. The panel, again, did what it is required to do, bash Trump on every issue. It was comical that Welker said that the Democrats had a good week last week, noting Spartacus's record-breaking historic speech. Isn't it amazing how they've tried to make that something it just isn't? I mean, it's nothing of substance came from that speech, but the way that they are propping it up and trying to say how historic it is, you're exactly right, Ken. I have to apologize to your viewers. While I watched most of this week with George Snuffleupagus and Deface the Nation, I didn't recant their comments here. They both mostly talked about the same issues discussed on Meet the Depressed. The Legacy Media Sunday shows are the same every week. Bash Trump and his administration and work as hard as possible to prop up the Democrats. They do this to have the Democrat views heard last, since viewers, especially the non-critically thinking sheeple, tend to remember the last thing that was said on any particular subject. I think it is such a sad vision for America's future that the legacy media, the Democrats, some Republicans, and almost half of the country's voters are working against making America great again. And it staggers the imagination on why these sheeple are against eliminating waste and fraud in government. They aren't the ones getting rich. They're the ones paying for others to get rich. How can they hate Trump, Musk, and any other wealthy Republican conservative in America, then turn a blind eye to the politicians that become millionaires on a yearly salary of $174,000? Great point, Ken. A great way to wrap up your recap. Thank you for doing the dirty work and watching the legacy media and their Sunday shows. It is very predictable. That's why, as a rule, I don't tend to watch them. I always kind of historically have said, Sunday's going to be the one day where I don't talk about politics or watch politics. That changed a little bit during the election because J.D. Vance was doing such an amazing job on those Sunday shows, and Speaker Johnson and others, they weren't taking it any longer. And it was very fun to watch in a way. I went back to the old ways and not watching it on Sunday, so I do appreciate the recap, Ken. Let's talk a little bit about New York State issues before we go to our next break. Governor Kathy Hochul is making lawmakers choose between vacation and the state budget. Hochul's spokesperson told Politico that the governor, who met with both legislative leaders this afternoon to continue negotiations, aims to finish budget talks by the middle of next week. But if that doesn't happen, she's threatening to hold them hostage here in Albany, making them say goodbye to their 2-week-plus Passover break. Quote, if we don't come to an agreement next week, the governor is prepared to do 2 to 3 emergency extenders per week until the budget is done. And I think you know what that means, her spokesperson said. Well, what that means, of course, is that if there's no budget deal, lawmakers will have to stick around the Capitol this month, whisking away any plans that had to enjoy time away from scenic Albany during the 18-day break. And if you heard what Governor Hochul said last week was essentially, well, it's nice in Albany in the summer, too. And that's in addition to the fact that the members won't get paid until the spending plan is finalized. The hardball move from Hochul comes after she told reporters Thursday she's prepared to stay in Albany until the summer to get what she wants out of the budget. Quote, I'm not in any rush. I will stay here as long as it takes to get the budget I believe delivers for New Yorkers. We're getting close. You don't have to wait forever, but summers are nice here too, she said. She and the leaders still have a lot to hash out, including 3 out of Hochul's 4 priorities. Her plan to ban phones bell-to-bell in classrooms seems like a done deal. Her push to restrict masks remains a non-starter for many lawmakers. 3 people familiar with the matter told Politico Playbook, there is a little support for it in the Senate. And Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie said much of the conference is concerned about how the measure, which makes it a criminal violation to wear a mask with the intent to harass, could exacerbate race-based policing. She also needs to convince the leaders to get on board with lowering the standard for involuntary commitment of the mentally ill. And on reforms to the state's discovery law, the governor just won't budge, according to 2 people familiar with the negotiations. Her push to change the law comes as criminal case dismissals have shot up in the city. Prosecutors say requirements on pretrial evidence sharing mandated by 2019 criminal justice reforms can be near impossible to meet. The reforms were an effort to practice of having those accused of petty crimes languish in jail, like the detention facility on Rikers Island. Quote, no one wants a case thrown out, but it's almost like the governor wants almost no cases thrown out. If there's a way to fix this thing that the reforms caused, everyone's willing to do that. But no one is willing to go backwards. I think she wants to go backwards, said one source. They pointed to Politico to one of Hochul's social media posts that he said explains her position on discovery. Public safety and justice must work hand in hand, Hochul said. By fixing our discovery process, we'll make sure our system is more fair and just for every New Yorker. During her Thursday remarks, Hochul made clear she is unwilling to compromise. Surrender is always easy. It's not something I ever engage in, though. April 1st is a great day. I'd love to hit it, but I am very successful in overtime, she said. We know very often she does end up caving on these issues, but saying she's willing to keep the lawmakers in Albany through spring break to get this budget through. Seems like the sticking points, not really surprising when you have a far-left Albany single-party rule that they don't like the mask ban or involuntary commitment. So it is going to be an uphill fight, but it'll be fascinating to watch whether or not Governor Hochul caves. Well, according to the New York Post editorial board, it's a tale all too typical of Albany. Governor Hochul, a year or so ago, was pushing to rein in out-of-control state Medicaid spending on home health aides, only to since switch sides with an eye on her re-election run next year. Now Medicaid outlays are set to soar at least 17% in the next budget, while the aid ranks are soaring and indeed are by far the single largest job category in all of New York State. A new Empire Center analysis of U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows that the Empire State home health aide workforce grew by 57,000 from 2023 to May of 2024, for a total of 623,000. That's far above the per capita level of other states and outnumbers New York's number 2 job category, retail sales, by nearly 3 to 1. This year, Hochul's initial budget proposed a 17% rise in Medicaid spending, some of it buried in other categories. The legislature will also certainly add to that somehow, since the Healthcare Workers Union, above all, 1199, are a ginormous lobbying power. This, when state Medicaid spending has seen double-digit growth and a surge in enrollment despite a falling poverty rate. And when New York's overall healthcare workforce grew from 1.15 million workers pre-pandemic to 1.4 million in 2024. Hochul has hoped to rein in the home aid ranks by centralizing hiring in her consumer-directed personal assistance program. But that's since morphed into a mass unionization drive after administrative maneuver that opened the door for 1199 to sign up the aides as members, even as the firm tapped to run the centralized hiring has itself been a subject of controversy. Meanwhile, Hochul's team also allowed New Yorkers without employer-sponsored health benefits to qualify for home care aid subsidies under the State Essential Plan, another big boost for 1199. To be fair, the unions aren't the only special interest to push ever higher health spending. The state's hospitals are a lobbying monster in their own right, and a host of nonprofit insurers and other intermediaries regularly spin off huge payments to the private interests that control them in various state-approved restructurings. Of course, since Medicaid is a joint state-federal program, New York's vast outlays and those of other ill-governed states like California and Illinois will soon face some tough love from Washington. Cuts in payments to the Empire State will hit the $10 billion range. Not that anyone now negotiating the new state budget cares to plan on it. Hochul and all other Democrats who rely on the political support that uncontrolled health spending buys will scream about Republicans and their cuts when the time comes, and most likely temporarily hike a host of New York state taxes to balance the books. Voters, consider yourself on notice. I thought that was a really good point from the New York Post. Stay with us. Keep those comments coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
Do it all with Steel Battery. Power up with free extra battery deals on select Steel tools. Shop in-store and online.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
The Bix website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. A comment from a viewer. I was disappointed to hear that our local head librarian is joining the Trump Doge resistance. Other outlets report a read-in protest inspired by the cutting of an obscure government agency that funnels money to libraries for special programs. But I do hope federal funding for local libraries and schools continues. Just eliminate the non-value added bureaucracy. Thank you very much, viewer. We were talking about New York State issues as well. But if you happen to go to speaking of the kind of Trump Doge resistance, Did anybody happen to see the protests happening on Saturday? Quite a turnout here in Corning. I have a picture I'll show you a little bit later on that someone sent in. I was told it was quite a crowd. Stayed around most of the afternoon, not really bringing business necessarily to Corning, but bringing a lot of people. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but if you happen to see or if you happen to attend, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Now, I think it was Friday, we talked about the bills that Governor Hochul signed into law last week that were anti-gun. We have a little more information on this. The ammunition control, quote, refines how credit card companies track purchases at gun dealerships. Hochul noted this gives law enforcement the opportunity to find out exactly who may be stockpiling ammunition. And this is an indicator that something untoward could be happening. So it's an important data point for us to have. North Country Now pointed out that credit card tracking will occur via the use of a new merchant code. And the code will allow the tracking of not only ammo purchases, but firearms as well. One of the other gun controls signed by Hochul outlines new warnings that gun dealers must provide to customers about the risk of firearms. And a third control that bans what are commonly known as Glock switches. Hochul explained the ban was accomplished by adding pistol converters to the definition of rapid-fire modification devices. Ironically, Glock switches are already banned at the federal level. So that's a little bit more. We still don't know what the exact definition of stockpiling is, or what the state government will use as the definition of stockpiling, but that is just kind of an update from a story we brought to you on Friday. Also, we learned, and we're going on some New York State issues here, the New York State Education Department has refused to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, going against orders from the Trump administration. In a letter issued Friday, Daniel Morton Bentley, who serves as the counsel and deputy commission for the NYSED, that's the New York State Education Department, argued that while they understand the Trump administration is seeking to censor anything it deems DEI, there are no federal or state laws prohibiting the principles of DEI. The letter comes as the Department of Education under the Trump administration issued a notice giving K-12 schools 10 days to sign and return a certification that they are allowing federal civil rights laws and ending DEI practices, according to the Associated Press. Quote, the New York State Education Department has certified on multiple occasions that it does and will comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and its implementing regulations. It did so recently in connection with its Every Student Succeeds Act plan, which the United States Department of Education approved on January 8, 2025. The certification remains in effect, as do other certifications and assurances regarding Title VI, previously provided to USDOE. Beyond that, NYSED is unaware of any authority that USDOE has to demand that a state education agency agree to its interpretation of a judicial decision or change the terms and conditions of NYSED's award without formal administrative process. We understand that the current administration seeks to censor anything it deems diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there are no federal or state laws prohibiting the principles of DEI, and USDOE has yet to define what practices it believes violates Title VI. Your request for certification merely adverts to certain and illegal DEI practices. The requested certification attempts to condition NYSED's continued funding on USDOE's interpretation of the law, an interpretation that, as USDOE admits, lacks the force and effect of the law. USDOE cannot make improvising changes to legal assurances and impose new requirements on recipients without adhering to rulemaking procedures. While the federal government provides about 10% of K-12 funding nationally, New York schools are mostly funded by local tax revenue and state funds. So there you are, refusing to comply with the Trump administration's demand, if you will, to end DEI practices. All right, we got to take a short break. We got a couple other New York State issues we're going to get to. And then we do have a lot about the Sunday shows. Ken was kind enough to write in and tell us what he saw in the Sunday shows, but there's also some other talking points that were used that we'll talk about. We'll talk about tariffs. Of course, that is the big discussion of the day, so that'll be a little bit later on as well. I did see that Representative Richie Torres who's most likely going to primary Governor Hochul, he's now pushing to crack down on illegal vapes from China. I thought this was already banned in the past here in New York State, but Governor Hochul should ramp up New York enforcement against illegal flavored cigarettes and vapes coming from China that ends up in the hands of New York teens, according to Richie Torres. He sits on the House Select Committee on the Communist Party, urged Hochul to amend state law to allow the tax department to bolster the state's anemic enforcement, now led by the health department. Quote, I urge your administration to take decisive action to strengthen enforcement against the sale of illegal flavored e-cigarettes, particularly those originating from China, by granting the New York Department of Taxation and Finance authority alongside the Department of Health. New York banned flavored vapes back in 2020, but the product continues to flood the market, according to Torres, undermining public health efforts. He compared the vapes, often disguised under misleading labels and shipped through unauthorized channels, designed to appeal to minors while evading both state and federal regulations. These products pose a direct threat to public health with dangerous high nicotine concentrations and unknown chemical additives. The persistence of illegal flavored vapes not only fuels nicotine addiction among young people, but also burdens state enforcement agencies that lack the necessary authority and resources to effectively crack down on these illicit operations. Richie Torres, looking at as someone who may be challenging in the primaries, Governor Hochul. All right, let's take that short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
One of the things I like most about being a mortgage loan officer is helping people make dreams come true.
The most satisfying part is seeing people succeed in accomplishing the purchase of a home.
Whether it's refinancing for a lower monthly payment, a lower interest rate, or to tap in your home's equity.
Whether you're buying your first home or looking to refinance, First Heritage will be here to help.
My name is Cindy.
My name is Tracy.
My name is Peter.
My name is Deb.
We are here to guide you.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
Shell Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon. Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A comment from a viewer: if the protesters just did their due diligence, they would realize they have nothing to protest. What a waste of a day. That's a good way to segue. Here is the photo that was sent of the protest. Quite a turnout there in Centerway. So, did you attend the protest? Did you see the protest? I guess there was a large amount of people. We're going to talk about a little bit later on in the program. We also have quite a few updates here about the Democrat Party. We know they're kind of in a disarray. That's why they're trying to prop up, Cory Booker's 25 hours and 5-minute speech that accomplished, as far as I could tell, nothing other than created a scenario that Cory Booker's name was put into the media so he could fundraise, so he could get those kudos. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. A couple other New York State issues before we move along and wrap up hour number one. A new bill in New York would ban cops in the state from stopping and searching drivers over a slew of low-level violations, including one that ended up nabbing serial killer Joel Rifkin. Top law enforcement officials are calling the Albany proposal the most dangerous and craziest bill they have ever seen. warning it would limit cops' ability to conduct routine traffic stops that can uncover much more serious crimes. It is the most ridiculous thing I've seen in my 36 years in law enforcement, Nassau County District Attorney Ann Donnelly told reporters. The proposed legislation would no longer allow officers to stop or search drivers over such issues as busted head or taillights, expired registrations and inspections, window tints, and even the smell of marijuana. No longer able to pull someone over for those infractions. Donnelly said she believes the bill would disproportionately impact Nassau County because of the region's high number of drivers and car accidents, allowing scofflaws and criminals to essentially break the law and get away with it. Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't have to have your inspection or your car registered, why would anybody get their car registered if that doesn't lead to you getting pulled over if you don't? She brought up the fact that Rifkin murdered at least 17 people in the area before being uncovered in 1993 during a traffic stop over the missing license plate on the rear of his tan Mazda pickup truck, which was hiding a body in its trunk. When an officer walks up to a driver and asks them for their license and registration, they never know what is going to happen next. It's important to be able to make these legitimate stops. There's no such thing as a routine traffic stop. But supporters of the bill argued it's a necessary step toward promoting racial equity and preventing unnecessary police encounters, especially in Nassau, which has an active lawsuit against the county claiming that the police have acted with racial bias when making traffic stops. Though Black and Latino residents make up under 30% of the county's population combined, police data show that they account for 61% of arrests, 50% of traffic stops, 60% of field interviews, and 69% of pat-downs. Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman called the argument ridiculous and said most of the time a stop is made, police are unaware of the driver's race beforehand. It's just a bizarre argument. It's pro-criminal. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you're breaking the law, then you're breaking the law. So that is a new push. The bill is sponsored by State Senator Brady Holman Siegel. Governor Hochul's office did not respond for comment. Where is this still Blakeman here? They say the roads are so bad in Nassau County. Well, you must just be taking another one away from us. They're going to get these bad drivers off the road. Stop taking the handcuffs off the criminals and putting them on our men and women in law enforcement. So, such things as, again, no longer will officers be allowed to stop or search drivers over such issues as busted head or taillights, expired registration and inspections, window tints, and even the smell of marijuana. There you are. Let's take a short break. Wrap up hour number one. Keep those comments coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
In today's world, securing your business is more important than ever. Protected with Boss Security's state-of-the-art alarm systems. When seconds matter, trust the experts. Boss Security is proud to safeguard local businesses across the Twin Tiers. Contact Boss Security today.
All isn't about the money or winning or losing. It's about the Mets. The Mets. Love the Mets. It's all about the Mets on WJKP, your local New York Mets station. Make sure you don't miss a home run and tune into WJKP 48.2 to watch the New York Mets this MLB season. Brought to you by your local Nissan dealers.
Let's go, Mets!
Every day Ebony K. Williams presides is another day when right prevails over wrong.
I can tell what happened to you, sir, because I was born at night, not last night.
Equal Justice with Judge Ebony K. Williams.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go through some viewer comments as we wrap up hour number 1. Hard to believe how quickly this program goes. Okay. Like you said, Frank, what is stockpiling of ammo? I have a shooting range. Me and my friends go through a lot of ammo and buy a lot, so I guess we'll be under the wire. Because of Miss Hochul. Totally screwed up. Yeah, I don't know what the definition is. It just sounds like if you're buying it with a credit card, it'll be tracked until you reach some anecdotal number, I guess, that will be deemed stockpiling. And then what? Then what is the mechanism next? Does that mean that police will come to your door to find out why you are buying so much ammunition? As we learn that they are trying to change the rules so there are no routine traffic stops. I don't have the answer for you. There are a lot more questions because of this bill than answers. So yes, I don't know what the definition of stockpiling is, and I don't know what the answer is if you are, quote, deemed to be stockpiling. Are police going to come to your door? I think that's a fair question. I'll try to find out more. Comment from a different viewer. The protesters are like politicians and legacy media. They have their talking points, but when asked a follow-up question, they have no response and no answers. They don't even know what they are protesting about. They say leave Social Security alone, yet the only cuts are either dead people or illegal immigrants receiving them. Don't touch education. They want children to still not be able to read or write. They literally make no sense in these protests. Thank you very much, viewer. There are now 10 politicians who pushed for Andrew Cuomo to resign his governorship, now endorsing him for the mayoral race. More than 1/3 of elected officials who've endorsed Andrew Cuomo's bid for mayor thus far previously demanded or welcomed his resignation as governor following his dueling sexual misconduct and COVID nursing home death scandals. In perhaps the most backward development of the New York City mayoral race, 10 of the 28 elected officials who have thrown their support behind the embattled ex-governor once wanted him out of public office. The eyebrow-raising flip-flop, which includes women in elected office, has turned the Me Too movement on its head. Electeds' support for Cuomo is a slap-in-the-face betrayal to government workers everywhere, including their own staff. It's cowardly to anyone who rightfully spoke up against Cuomo 4 years ago to now say, no, second chance, let the voters decide, etc., said Erica Vladimir, founder of the Sexual Harassment Working Group, which fought harassment against legislative staffers. Several elected officials had issued statements slamming Cuomo, but have made a complete about-face now that the Democrat's running for mayor. Queens State Senator Toby Ann Stravinsky is among those who urged Cuomo to step down as governor, only to turn around and endorse him for mayor. It's clear that there's a pattern of unacceptable and troubling behavior. The governor should resign or face impeachment, Stravinsky said on August 3rd, 2021. Her statement came out after a devastating report commissioned by Letitia James substantiated harassment claims leveled against Cuomo by a slew of women. Cuomo has denied the harassment accusations from female staffers and other women, including a state trooper. Assemblywoman Rodney Hermelin, who is the Brooklyn Democrat Party chairwoman, is now among Cuomo's biggest boosters. But she previously said Cuomo's resignation was in the interest of the people of the state. In this disquieting time, there was some relief in seeing repercussions for Cuomo's shameful conduct. Now, again, the hypocrisy in all of this, endorsing Cuomo for mayor. Bronx Representative Richie Torres, who we just mentioned about the vape issue, said at the time that Cuomo's resignation is in the best interest of New York State. But when he was one of the first big endorsers for Cuomo in February, he said he didn't want to relitigate the past. Likewise, State Senator James Sanders said, I'm calling on Governor Cuomo to resign after James' report, but has since endorsed the ex-governor for mayor. Now, Richie Torres said, I predict the comeback story of the 2025 election will be the resurrection of Andrew Cuomo. America loves a comeback. New York loves a comeback. The list goes on and on. So about 10 politicians that once called for Cuomo to resign and not be in public office, now endorsing him for mayor. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. Hour number 2, mere moments away. Hour number 1 already in the books. Unbelievable. Stay with us.
When I was in law school, my father had to stop working when he developed early Alzheimer's. Social Security disability benefits saved my parents financially. I'm Peter Gorton of Lockman & Gorton. Now I'm a lawyer who helps people when they need Social Security disability. If you can't work, I'd like to help.
For a free consultation, call Lockman & Gorton toll-free 1-800-698-0567.
We lost our son Brett to a glioblastoma. This was our last chance to show our community who he really was. Carpenters, Phillips, and Flint, they were so willing to create that ceremony however we wanted to do it. They could not have been more gracious.
You should consider them highly. You'll feel good about your thoughts and your decisions.
Visit carpentersphillipsflint.com to learn more about our family-owned funeral homes.
Going to go to the gym? The health club is not an option? Come to Hesselson today and see why swim spas and fitness systems can fit into anyone's yard and budget. 12-foot, 14-foot, 15-foot, 18-foot dual temperature hot tub and swim spas are all on display in Hesselson's indoor and outdoor showroom. Try before you buy. 0% interest-free financing options are available on every Hesselson swim spa. Swim and exercise year-round and start making every day better. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
It's hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us. Some comments from viewers. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. I just want to say that it sickens me to think that Andrew Cuomo most likely will be elected again one day. Yes, it looks as if that's the case. There's a really interesting piece at the New York Times that says they pushed for Cuomo to resign. Now they're clearing his comeback path. Many political, business, and union leaders who castigated former Governor Andrew Cuomo and pressed him to resign have done an about-face and support his run for mayor. You can find that for yourself. I think I found it on Empire Report, but it is specifically with the New York Times. Comment from a different viewer. I don't get it. Hochul is going to let criminals out of jail and tie law enforcement hands on pulling possible criminals over. But if you buy too much ammo to protect yourself against criminals entering your property, you are a criminal too? Yep. Now, I don't know what kind of punishment comes or what the definition of stockpiling ammo is. I don't know if there are any teeth to this law. We've just reported to you what we've heard, but don't know the specifics of what defines stockpiling. And if you do, quote unquote, stockpile ammunition as defined by Governor Hochul, is there a punishment? Is there some type of consequence? But let's talk about the Democrat Party for a moment. There's a lot to cover here. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, you may recall him. He ran for vice president with Kamala Harris. He conceded Sunday that history may judge Democrats for failing to acknowledge that former President Joe Biden wasn't up to the grueling task of running the country for another 4 years. Initially, the former Democrat vice presidential nominee tried to evade questions about whether Democrats made a mistake by failing to acknowledge Biden wasn't up for the job before ultimately admitting that that may have been the case. He said he made that decision. Look, history will tell us to go back on that. That very well could be the case, Jake. So conceding that Democrats should have looked into or should have reported or spoke out against Biden's cognitive decline. But of course, we know that they didn't. Now they're trying to kind of cover themselves, like Walz here, like Jake Tapper, who he was talking to, who wrote a book trying to kind of rewrite history, take the blame off of him and other reporters who not only refused to talk about Biden's cognitive decline, actually attacked you if you did talk about it. Criticizing you, calling you conspiracy theorists, etc. Now, throughout his later years in office, Biden had been Then came his disastrous debate against Trump last June, which sparked a Democratic mutiny against him after he appeared tired and at times distracted. Waltz emerged as a defender of Biden during the initial aftermath, saying, quote, yes, he's fit for office. No one of us denying Thursday night was a bad performance. It is a bad get, if you will, on that. But it doesn't impact what I believe he's delivering. Biden dropped out of the race just shy of 3 weeks later as a growing chorus of Democrats publicly urged him to step aside. Waltz said, "Well, I'm concerned about is learning from those lessons. I would hope we would never do it again, make a mistake. Make sure we go through and get someone. But I don't know where it helps us going forward," he said over the weekend. "I'm certainly thinking about running again in Minnesota," he also said, "if that's what they want. I'm not thinking about running in 2028, Waltz said when asked if he is eyeing a presidential run. "In this moment, you're planning for 2028. You're going to get rolled by the people in the streets. When I criticize, I'm criticizing myself. I own this. I'm part of the ticket," Waltz said about criticism of the Harris-Walz campaign message. "It should have been a slam dunk for us to say we're the party that cares about that. We're the party that's going to protect Social Security and Medicare. We're the party that thinks the ACA is a good start, but we need to do more on health care. And we didn't do that. I think we allowed ourselves to do is we got timid. That's the point that I'm saying is Fox News will criticize, oh, he's for DEI. Not your definition of DEI. My definition is rule of law that's fair, that everybody gets an opportunity, and that's the point I think we have to make." Kamala Harris saying, I guess feeling vindicated in some way after the election, saying, "I told you so." Harris joked, "I told you so," in a public appearance last week, suggesting that she warned voters about Trump's second term. We mentioned this last week, but this ties in with a larger picture that we're going to get to in a moment. Harris claimed that when she allegedly warned about is coming to pass during a speaking engagement at the Leading Women Defined Summit in California. Quote, "We are seeing organizations stay quiet. We are seeing those who are capitulating to clearly unconstitutional threats. And these are the things we are witnessing each day in the last few months in our country. And it understandably creates a great sense of fear because there were many things we knew would happen. I'm not here to say I told you so. I swear I wasn't going to say that." So she believes she's in the place where she can tell you, "I told you so." All right, your thoughts on that? We do have a little bit more about the protests. We're going to talk about more about the Democrat Party as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on the tariffs. We had a viewer write in over the weekend saying now's the time to buy stock. I'm no financial expert by any means, but your thoughts on the tariffs and I don't know, what would you call it, the scare tactics of those in the media saying that this is as bad as it gets, that Trump is doing as bad as he possibly can. We'll talk about that as well. Harris saying, "I told you so." Now, according to a new book, that book that we keep talking about called Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, former President Barack Obama sought to distance himself from the Democrat Party after leaving it in shambles following his departure from the White House. That's according to that new book. They claim that Obama was never a Democrat Party loyalist. Instead, the authors allege Obama curried favor from a group of, quote, black professionals for his campaign, unlike former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and former President Joe Biden. Additionally, Obama's creation of Organizing for Action, a nonprofit that launched in 2012 following Obama's re-election to advance his legislative priorities, fractured the Democrat Party, according to the book authored by political journalist Jonathan Allen of NBC News and Amy Parnes of The Hill. Though Organizing for Action never realized its vision, it competed with the party for power and money. He left the Democrat Party far weaker than he found it. Or, as one party operative put it, Obama destroyed that blank. The book also detailed how the Clintons, along with Biden and former Democrat National Committee Chair Donna Brazile and a few other party operatives, sought to rebuild the party infrastructure following Obama's 2016 departure from the White House. This meant preventing far-left Democrats from seizing control of the party and ensuring party loyalists ran the show, according to the book. By helping install party loyalists at the national and state committees over the course of years, these establishment Democrats kept progressive outsiders at bay. You know who did that? Said one Biden ally familiar with the maneuvering, Bill and Hillary Clinton. And this it kind of points to what I said at the time, too, back in 2016, that the Democrat machine had made it so there was no way Bernie Sanders was going to be the nominee, even though he was arguably the more popular one between him and Hillary, and I think would have done a much better job facing Donald Trump, both having that kind of populist message, both packing in the crowds. So that would have been interesting to watch. But continuing, Fight, which is released Tuesday, also revealed how Obama remained hesitant to back Harris. We mentioned this last week. The book claimed that Obama didn't believe Harris had the capacity to beat Donald Trump in the November race, frustrating Harris. Ultimately, Obama endorsed Harris 5 days after Biden announced he would not run for office again in 2024, a delay that offended Harris and required some mending between the two Democrats. A spokesman for Obama's press office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Even so, Obama's wife, former First Lady Michelle Obama, appeared at the Democratic National Convention in August of 2024 after Harris clinched the party's nomination. Kamala Harris is more than ready for this moment, Michelle said at the time. Meanwhile, Democrat strategists predicted that Barack Obama's influence over the Democrat Party is waning, and some have suggested he is out of touch with the appeal of Trump. For example, political commentator and author Ben Burgess wrote an op-ed after Obama delivered a speech at the Obama Democracy Forum that part of the problem is Obama doesn't understand why Trump won in 2024 and that the American public should stop listening to the former president. Obama's characteristic rhetorical virtues were on full display, Burgess wrote. He was a Constitution lawyer, professor, before he was a politician, and he still sounds like one. At the same time, he was a once-in-a-generation talent as a political communicator. He knows how to convey a complex set of ideas in a digestible and appealing way. But there was a massive, gaping hole at the center of his speech. He still doesn't understand why his 8 years in power culminated in the rise of Trump. Now, Democrats are refusing Barack Obama's election meddling, according to Miranda Devine, Barack Obama has lost his mojo and ruined his brand. It used to be said that Joe Biden was serving Obama's third term, that his former boss was controlling him from the home he had bought in D.C.'s ritzy Kalorama neighborhood, 2 miles from the White House. The feeling was that Obama was the real leader of the Democrat Party, and his wife, Michelle, was the secret weapon that would whip out in 2024 to replace Biden and trounce Donald Trump. Well, none of that came to pass. And judging by his irrelevant poll numbers, Obama's star has long faded. In a CNN poll last month, Obama received only 4% support from Democrats who were asked which leader best represents the party, lagging behind AOC, Harris, and Bernie Sanders. Ouch. If Obama really was the puppeteer pulling Biden's strings, he has a lot to answer for, judging by the state of the Democrat Party. But in reality, the former prez was so aloof from politics that he didn't even bother watching Biden's disastrous debate performance last summer that killed his re-election bid. According to this new book, again, Fight, Obama was alerted to the catastrophe by his phone. Obama kept his thoughts to himself that night, but his proxies didn't afford Biden the same courtesy. As his former advisors like David Axelrod and the people on Pod Save America waged a campaign against Biden, Obama stayed silent. But behind the scenes, the book suggests he was urging the party to dump Biden and run a mini primary to choose his replacement. And he didn't want that replacement to be Harris. The mini primary was Obama's way of trying to kneecap Harris. At one point, when Biden looked like he was clinging to his candidacy, Obama called him and demanded to know, what is your path? According to the authors, Biden angrily thought to himself as he listened, what's my path? What's your blanking plan? No drama Obama, who likes to stay above the fray, ultimately outsourced the wet work to movie star George Clooney and party godmother Nancy Pelosi, who didn't like her fellow San Franciscan Harris either. Pelosi's biggest initial fear had been about Harris. She actually was worried when people were panicking the night of the debate, saying, oh my goodness, it's going to be her, meaning Harris. After a pep talk from Obama on the phone, Pelosi appeared on Morning Joe and damned Biden with faint praise, pretending the party was waiting for him to make up his mind about dropping out when he had already unequivocally vowed to stay on. She resurrected the insurrection Biden thought he had put down. Then came the death blow from Obama's good buddy, George Clooney, who published an op-ed in the New York Times urging Biden to abandon his bid for re-election and allow the party to hold a mini primary. Clooney's words so closely reflected Obama's thinking that the op-ed might as well have carried the former president's byline. Obama didn't want to get his own hands dirty, could face leaving bloody fingerprints on Biden's political corpse, but he hoped others would shoulder the work. Obama might have won the battle to oust Biden, but he was sorely mistaken if he thought he could control the party he once led when it came to choosing the replacement of the 2024 presidential race. He left the Democrat Party far weaker than he found it, one party operative said. In the end, Obama was punked, if you will, by the demented old man from whom he had such contempt. Biden issued his resignation letter from the race on July 21st, 2024, without mentioning Harris, but he followed up minutes later with a message on social media endorsing the VP as the Democratic nominee. Party kingmaker Jim Clyburn, who had harnessed the black vote in South Carolina to clinch Biden the nomination in 2020, also outsmarted Obama by quickly endorsing Harris before he was due to take a call from the ex-president, urging him to back a mini primary. To add to this, Clooney was reportedly furious when Morning Joe co-host Mika Brzezinski suggested that Obama had put him up to writing the Times op-ed and maybe even ghost wrote it. George Clooney yelled obscenities at the MSNBC producer, according to another book about the Biden campaign called Uncharted. There was a time when Clooney might have been proud to have been linked to the one. Now he wants to distance himself. Yet another sign of Obama's waning influence. Obama is trying to win back relevance by giving speeches urging anti-Trumpers to sacrifice a little bit in their opposition to the president. What exactly does that mean? Commit hara-kiri, break the law, go to jail, blow up their business? He suggested that law firms being threatened might have to say, okay, we will lose some business. But what he meant in a long waffle, it didn't sound good. Coming from an entitled rich guy with 3 or maybe 4 luxury houses who has never sacrificed anything. If Democrats are looking for people to help them out of the doldrums, the last person they should listen to is Obama. He helped give them Trump, not once, but twice. I thought that was a very good piece by Miranda Devine. But we'll take a short break. We're a little bit late. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
Hustling plus overbooked, plus bustling, plus cleaning overlooked. It all adds up. With Mary Maid's professional cleaning services, you'll have one less thing to worry about. Mary Maid's, relax, it's done. Plus too busy, plus bustling, plus in a tizzy. It all adds up. With Mary Maid's professional cleaning services, you'll have one less thing to worry about. Mary Maid's, relax, it's done.
It's spring, and Bath Planet has one question for you. Do you feel lucky? Well, do ya? Bath Planet is excited to announce the Dream Bath Giveaway 5. In the past 2 years, we have given away 4 brand new Dream Baths, and now it's your turn. The winner will be able to design their own bath or shower, complete with hundreds of color and pattern options, multiple shelf styles, and matching safety features. It's the Dream Bath Giveaway 5. Enter now by scanning the QR code or stopping by either of our 2 locations.
Who's Alex? Hey, pal. You know who's,
See you, Dad. Happy birthday, Alex.
That's so sweet. You remembered.
It's all about connecting with seamless connectivity.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. A couple of comments from viewers. Mark says Obama, both Bushes and Biden were run by their parties, but not Trump. He is not run by anyone. Yes, if anything, he has changed really the Republican Party towards his beliefs. That's not a negative thing. I'm not saying it like that. But yes, if anything, the Republicans have adapted to Trump, not the other way around. Comment from Ken. Thank you for the information on how costly Medicaid is in New York. It solidifies my belief on why New York and Medicaid stole money from my brother's daughter. I know this is long and mostly me venting, but I think it's about New York corruption. It's not too bad. This isn't too bad, Ken. My brother passed away 5 years ago. Sorry to hear that. 2 years ago, I checked New York unclaimed funds to see if there was anything there that my niece could claim. There was some monies there, but while they wouldn't tell me exactly how much, they said it was a little over $100. At that point, I decided it wasn't enough to warrant claiming it. Then in December of 2024, my niece revealed 2 1099s from New York in my brother's name, saying that unclaimed funds paid him about $2,400. I started to investigate why he received these tax documents and discovered that Medicaid levied the funds from unclaimed funds to pay off old bills. My brother was in a local nursing home for the last 3 years of his life and was on Medicaid, who took all of his pension and Social Security checks and some monies in the bank to pay for the nursing home. I managed his bills during that time, and there was never an unpaid bill. I've been talking to New York Legal and Medicaid for over 3 months, and they still haven't given me any information on what unpaid bills were out there that warranted them taking the funds that my niece could have used. Bottom line is they stole the money. Apparently New York needs it more than a young girl that lost her father. Thank you, Ken. Sorry that you had to go through that. I do believe there are lots of concerns, a lot of questions about Medicaid, and hopefully Trump specifically can clean, or Musk, I guess, can clean up the mess. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, Obama slammed Trump for yanking the media out of the White House pool. Former President Barack Obama went viral last week for slamming President Trump's recent moves to yank media outlets out of the White House pool, questioning what the reaction would have been if he had done that during his presidency. You may recall I mentioned that last week. It came off as quite pathetic. But Obama saying, imagine if I had done any of this. Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but that is what is happening. Yeah, he had it so bad by the media, right? But however, the Obama administration briefly attempted to limit Fox News' press pool access early in his presidency. In 2009, the Obama administration tried to block Fox News' pool team from interviewing his executive pay czar, Kenneth Feinberg, despite giving other outlets in the pool access while openly questioning the network's status as a news organization. We see Fox right now as the source and the outlet for Republican Party talking points, former White House Communications Director Anita Dunn said at the time. And it's fine if that's, how you want to build your business model. And we understand that. And it's working for them, and we understand that as well. But we don't think we need to treat them as they are a news organization the way other news organizations here are treated. Ultimately, the other top TV networks protested, with CNN, ABC, CBS, and NBC rejecting the White House's plan to cut Fox News out of the interview with Feinberg. Obama brushed aside his administration's attacks on Fox News at the time, saying, we're going to make the media as it comes. And if media is operating basically as a talk radio format, then that's one thing. And if it's operating as a news outlet, that's another. But it's not something I'm losing a lot of sleep over. Now, the legacy media and Washington journalists come around to investigating a Democrat scandal years after conservatives sounded the alarm. This is coming from Emma Colton at Fox News, saying legacy media and longtime politics reporters are increasingly reporting on scandals that rocked the Democrat Party ahead of the November election, shining additional light on political issues that Republicans have long spotlighted and railed against. A full 4.5 years after the New York Post bombshell series on Hunter Biden's influence peddling schemes, the New York Times has deigned to take an interest in the former first son's corruption. The New York Post editorial board wrote in a piece last week, we'd say that the Times' willingness to at long last cover this comes better late than never, but it only published a story now that it doesn't remotely matter anymore. The New York Times declared in an article published Friday that former first son Hunter Biden sought support from the State Department to aid his former employer, Ukraine energy company Burisma, while his father served as vice president. Hunter Biden allegedly leveraged his last name and father's political status in the U.S. and has long been criticized by conservatives who have alleged that Hunter and his father engaged in influence peddling through Burisma. Hunter Biden was paid millions of dollars while serving on the board of Burisma after joining the company as legal counsel in the spring of 2014 before being elevated to the board of directors later that year. The Bidens were accused by Republicans of having coerced the Burisma CEO into paying them millions of dollars in exchange for their helping in getting the Ukraine prosecutor investigating the company fired during the Obama administration. The 46th president denied any involvement in his son's business dealings. Biden issued his son a sweeping 10-year pardon before exiting the Oval Office in January that protects Hunter Biden from offenses he, quote, has committed or may have committed from January 1st, 2014 to December 1st, 2024. Alleged Biden family influence peddling has echoed from the halls of Congress to social media channels on X, but legacy outlets and left-wing media outlets often didn't give a platform to these allegations. Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor, and Shapiro professor of public interest law at George Washington University, published an op-ed for Fox News Digital on Sunday, remarking on the New York Times piece that was published years after other outlets and experts investigated alleged Biden family influence peddling. Quote, for years, some of us have written about the Biden family's multi-million-dollar influence peddling operation and the Justice Department's refusal to charge Hunter Biden with being an unregistered foreign agent. Now, years later, the New York Times has found evidence suggesting that the former president's son was acting as a foreign agent as early as the Obama administration when his father was vice president. Media veterans and legacy outlets have leaned into reporting on and investigating a handful of other scandals and political news that conservatives had long sounded the alarm on, including that the coronavirus likely originated out of a lab in China, as well as on President Biden's mental decline in the lead up to the election last year. The New York Times ran a column last month claiming the scientific community badly misled the public in an effort to suppress the theory that COVID-19 originated in a lab in Wuhan, China, even after the party's own science writer called the theory racist. We were badly missed about the event that changed our lives, was the piece. So the New York Times defended that it had reported on the lab leak theory multiple times across the years, including in 2021 when approached for comment by Fox Digital, saying the New York Times has intensely pursued every theory and lead on the origins of COVID-19, documented the public debate, political debate, funding, influence, and shifts in thinking among the scientific community, and reported on China's censorship campaign that has stifled the search for truth. The Times has helped readers navigate the coronavirus pandemic throughout independent, verified reporting, and an insinuation that we were not thoroughly pursuing it is false. And a newly released book by longtime D.C. reporter Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes, the one that I've been talking about all morning, they investigated Biden's mental decline in the lead up to the general election, calling him a shell of himself. All of them. Parnes told Vanity Fair of who in Biden's inner circle is most to blame for covering up his mental decline when he was in office. It's pretty remarkable now they kept him very closed off. He was a shell of himself. When he entered the White House, he was so different from the man I'd covered as vice president, a guy who could hold court in the Naval Observatory with reporters until the wee hours. We've been watching Biden's decline for a long period of time. Honestly, thought he had lost his fastball some when he was running in 2020. And it was still so shocking to see the leader of the free world so bereft of coherent thought, Allen said. And again, not reporting on it until well after the fact when the damage has already been done. We have to take a short break. We are running late. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
Do it all with Steel Battery. Power up with free extra battery deals on select Steel tools. Shop in-store and online.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
It's a season of
scary. Having a good time has always been my number one goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street Corning. Let's go to some viewer comments. Mark writes in, Ken, sorry for your loss. And welcome to Crooked New York for other reasons. I'm upset, too, with our unworthy governor. Thanks, Mark. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. Trump playing the market like a fine-tuned fiddle. When the market goes down, investors turn to gold and U.S. Treasury bonds. That lowers interest rates and lowers inflation. It also puts a lot of cash into the system, which lowers inflation even more. Go Trump. More investment inside America. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. People that come to this country without signing the book need to return to go and start over. Also, we talk about tenure. Why can't tenure be revoked if that teacher or professor is advising things that become harmful to students, as in anti-Semitism? Because I don't think the universities have the interest in doing that, to revoking the tenure or trying to go after someone. I mean, they wanted to see these anti-Semitic protests flurry. They wanted to see them grow. It's only because their hand has been forced with federal monies that they now are cracking down. Interesting piece at the New York Post editorial board saying that Democrats have long railed against the scourge of dark money. It's hard to take them serious when you look at George Soros receiving that Medal of Freedom and the like, but they've also railed against foreign influence on election and spent the entire 2024 election promising to save democracy from the dastardly Republicans. But it turns out the call was coming from inside the House, as they say. Last week, 3 House committees released a report after a months-long probe showing that progressive money-making machine, Act Blue, lowered its standards for fraud twice during the 2024 election cycle. The result, hundreds of fraudulent donations poured in, some from countries like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Colombia. Worse, the nonprofit knew mass fraud was likely happening and increased the risk. An Act Blue fraud prevention specialist flagged the outfit's likelihood of fraudulent score with its fraud prevention company SIFT was the highest it had ever been and appeared to be climbing further in July of 2024. Yet the bosses chose to weaken the guardrails for the second time in a year, just 2 months later, all making it easier to get illegal donations through Act Blue's Swiss cheese screening system. From that report, internal communications explained that if someone could coordinate a big attack where each individual donation fell below the fraud review threshold, they would go through. Yet Act Blue told fraud prevention staff to look for reasons to accept contributions. The report follows a racketeering lawsuit filed by a Wisconsin Republican strategist who claims his identity was stolen and used to make 385 fake donations to various left causes via Act Blue. In short, Act Blue looks so eager to help Democrats that it basically whitewashed illegal giving. Cue a mass rush for the doors. 7 Act Blue senior officials have resigned, and a top lawyer in its general counsel office went on to leave after suggesting he was retaliated against for whistleblowing. Democrats routinely pretend that Republicans are funded by special interests and the 1%, while their candidates are backed by small grassroots donors, real Americans as they're called, and while they're raking in cash from billionaires like George Soros, Reid Hoffman, Peter Buffett, and others, with vast dark money giving laundered through outlets like the Tides Foundation and a shady foreign donor. The Democracy is in Danger Party has been pointing its fingers in the wrong direction. All right, we got a couple of things we've got to get to. Boy, this show's going quickly. Thank you for joining us this morning. Doug Emhoff, which of course was the first gentleman, is that what it was considered? He was Harris's husband. Former Vice President Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, reportedly criticized his own law firm the other day for its recent dealings with President Donald Trump. A CNN report on Saturday cited sources who said Emhoff was speaking during a charity gala dinner in Los Angeles. The article said Emhoff condemned the decisions by his law firm to preemptively come to an agreement with the Trump administration to avoid an executive order targeting the firm. Emhoff told the crowd at the annual dinner gala for the legal aid group Bet Tzedek He had told the firm he wanted to fight the threat of an executive order he found unconstitutional, but had been overruled, according to the sources. Trump has been fighting back against big law, as we know, are huge law firms that indirectly subsidize the Democrats' lawfare campaign against him and that have encouraged lawyers to provide pro bono work for the left. Now, during the weekend shows, Senator Cory Booker was on ABC's This Week, saying that Trump was violating the fundamental rights of people in order to punish them. And this was George Stephanopoulos' show. Now, Cory Booker got exactly what he wanted with that 25-hour and 5-minute speech because it gave the media an opportunity to praise him, say here's a Democrat finally doing something. I don't really know what that doing accomplished. I don't really know. Now, if you know about the resistance and the group that protests on Saturday, their slogan is do something. So I guess giving that speech that no one was really watching at the end of the day is doing something. But again, asking the question, what was accomplished? But Booker was on Stephanopoulos' show saying, well, first and foremost, you're calling retribution, but it's something far worse than that. If you look around the world, from Viktor Orban to Vladimir Putin, this is not what democratic leaders do. This is really a violation of our constitutional principles, that he's using the power of that office not to advance noble causes that could help the American people, whether I disagree with them or not. That's what a president is called to do. Do what they think is best interest of the public at large. What the president is instead doing is violating our constitutional principles, violating the fundamental rights of people in order to punish them, to carry out his own retribution plan. You know, John F. Kennedy famously said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Donald Trump is now saying, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for Donald Trump to make amends. He is trying to hurt people, to make them cower to him and offer him tribute in order to not violate the Constitution and hurt them economically. This is something that should not just be about a bunch of law firms. This is something that should ultimately be about Americans. And every American right now should be sitting back, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, and should ask yourself, when is it enough? When has he crossed my line when it comes to my love of this country? Is it bad enough that he's putting on the biggest tax on Americans that I've ever seen through these tariffs, which are taxes on Americans? Is that enough? Is it enough when he's threatening the health care of tens of millions of Americans, disabled children or elders? Is that enough? Is that crossing my line, or will it pay for his tax cuts? Again, threatening the health care of tens of millions of Americans, that's a lie that has continued to be pushed time and time again. And that's unfortunately why some people protested over the weekend, maybe not doing the research. All right. Adam Schiff, who Ken had mentioned earlier when he was watching the Sunday shows, he was on Meet the Press. He said, I don't agree with, well, let me take a step back. Kristen Welker said, let's start out by talking about President Trump's tariffs. He calls this an economic revolution. He says these tariffs are necessary to reset the global economic order and so that the United States is treated fairly on the world stage. How do you respond to that? Do you agree with any part of that? Schiff said, I don't agree with any part of that. And unfortunately, he's wrecking our economy. I think people have seen the retirement savings on fire. And there he is out on the golf course. That may be the most enduring of the Trump presidency. That is the president out on a golf cart while people's retirements are in flames. The Treasury Secretary is saying that people aren't looking at where their retirement savings are. Maybe he doesn't have to. He has the wealth. He doesn't have to. Maybe the president with his wealth doesn't have to. But what I'm hearing from the Californians and those and have just retired and those on the eve of retiring are terrified by this. I hope and pray we head out of a recession, but it will be the Trump recession. He will completely own it. This is a complete self-destructive economic act that he's engaged in. It's not just the tariffs. It's also the freezing of funds, the firing of people. James Carville was on his podcast. He actually compared those who are cooperating with Trump to Nazi collaborators. James Carville said, how disgraced must these law firms feel now? How disgraced must these companies that are sucking up to him, that are giving him tens of millions of dollars for access? Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know how this ends? Do you know that these collaborators, what the country is going to feel towards collaborators with this regime? Maybe you need to go to history and see what happened in August of 1944 after Paris was liberated. They didn't take very kindly to the collaborators. No, it was not a very pretty sight in the streets of Paris. I'm not saying that these people should be placed in pajamas and have their head shaved, march down Pennsylvania Avenue and spit on. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that that did happen. And I'm saying that these people betrayed the French nation in the same way that I think these law firms and these giant corporate conglomerates are betraying the United States. What their comeuppance is, I can only guess. I don't believe in any kind of, don't believe you should assault anybody. All right, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
What better way to start or end every day than relaxing in your very own Hesselson's hot tub? Massage therapy, relaxation, stress reliever, pain management, soothing muscles, or just spending time with a loved one. Hot water therapy really does make every day better. Hesselson's has been a part of this great community for over 70 years, still being locally owned and operated. So make the drive to Hesselson's and start making your path to a better life today. And after 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife Catherine.
The Bix website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So as we had mentioned and we showed that picture to you earlier, the protest taking place on Saturday, the so-called hands-off rallies, crowds of people angry about the way President Trump is running the country, marched and rallied in scores of American cities on Saturday, and the biggest day of demonstrations yet by an opposition movement trying to regain its momentum after the shock of the Republicans' first weeks in office. So-called hands-off demonstrators were organized for more than 1,200 locations in all 50 states by more than 150 groups, including civil rights organizations, labor unions, LGBTQ advocates, veterans, and election activists. The rallies appeared peaceful with no immediate reports of arrests. Pro-Palestinian protesters carrying a depiction of President Trump were there at some kind of like the Fight the Oligarchy rallies being held by Bernie Sanders and AOC. The White House released a statement saying President Trump's position is clear. He will always protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for eligible beneficiaries. Meanwhile, the Democrats' stance is giving Social Security, Medicare, and Medicare benefits to illegal aliens, which will bankrupt these programs and crush American seniors. Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign Advocacy Group, criticized the administration's treatment of the LGBTQ community at the rally at the National Mall in Washington. The attacks that we are seeing, they're not just political, they're personal, y'all. They're trying to ban our books. They're slashing HIV prevention funding. They're criminalizing our doctors, our teachers, our families, and our lives. We don't want this in America. We want the America we deserve, where dignity, safety, and freedom belong not to some of us, but to all of us. So did you attend? Were you able to perhaps drive by the hands-off rally? I know there was one in Corning. I'm not sure if there's one in Elmira, but I did see pictures from the event at Corning. It looked like quite a turnout. We speak of those anti-oligarchy rallies. Now, some have been critical of even the use of the term oligarchy within the Democrat Party, saying, that's not how you reach more people. But Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are harnessing what they hope will be the pulling power of the entertainment world for a planned fighting oligarchy rally set for LA's Grand Park later this month. So who will be attending? Neil Young, Joan Baez, and Maggie Rogers. I don't know who that is. I do know Joan Baez and Neil Young. Variety reports that there are just a few names destined for the rally. The outlet further notes that the level of excitement from these destined to appear and shake their fists at bad President Trump, literally, musically, and metaphorically. Rosenstack was the most immediately obviously stoked of all the performers, posting on social media, "Me, Bernie, AOC, and Neil Young," in all caps. After calling it a dream, and then there's some marijuana jokes. The Gloria Molina Grand Park Tour stop for Sanders fighting oligarchy. Where we go from here follows similar, if less star-powered, rallies held recently in Las Vegas, Tucson, Denver, Tempe, and other western cities. Upcoming stops have been scheduled in April for the California cities of Bakersfield, Auburn, plus Salt Lake City, Idaho, and Montana and Missouri. Representatives Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna are scheduled to speak in LA as well. The Fighting Oligarchy Tour is mostly destined for Republican majority areas, but a decision was made to make an exemption for the deep blue LA. Sanders' website claims the tour has been attended by 107,981 people across 7 states so far, and the live streams of the tour have been watched more than 5 million times. Now, a disturbing... Oh, no, got to take a short break. We're running a little bit late. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Read some comments when we come back. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC, or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
Something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So glad that you've joined us. Got a couple comments from viewers. To the viewer who mentioned a friend of Frankly Speaking, Bobby Ann Cox. I don't know specifically about the topic that you are discussing, but I would be happy to reach out to Bobby Ann Cox and see if she wants to be back on the program to talk about that specific issue. I just don't have that info in front of me. So thank you for that comment, viewer. Comment from a different viewer. Listen, Frank, most parents, grandparents, and adults will stand up to protect children from bullies. Trump is the world's biggest bully, and billions of children will pay the price unless grown-ups do something and save them from Trump. For heaven's sakes, please get off this kick of supporting an insane bully and do it today. Bye. Now, thank you, viewer. A disturbing new report reveals that violent political rhetoric online, including calls for the murder of public figures like Trump and Musk, is being increasingly normalized, particularly on the left. The report from Network Contagion Research Institute found that a growing number of people are willing to justify and even applaud killing in the name of politics and a warped sense of social justice. The chilling change appears to have accelerated in recent months. Joel Finkelstein, the lead author of the report, said what was formerly taboo culturally has become acceptable. We're seeing a clear shift, glorification, increased attempts, and changing norms, all converging into what we define as the assassination culture. The NCIRA study traces the cultural shift back to the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson by Luigi Mangione in December of 2024. What followed, researchers say, was a viral wave of memes that turned Mangione into a folk hero. According to the study, these memes have sparked copycat behavior targeting other figures associated with wealth and conservative politics. It's not just Luigi anymore, Finkelstein said. We're seeing an expansion. Trump, Musk, and others are now being openly discussed as legitimate targets, often cloaked in meme culture and online dialogue. A ballot measure in California, darkly named the Luigi Mangione Access to Health Care Act, is just one real-world outgrowth of this online movement. In the chart, over half of left-leaning respondents said killing the president would at least somewhat be justified, according to NCRI's national survey. The study found that 55% of self-identified left-of-center participants justified it to some degree, while 48% did the same for Elon Musk. These are not isolated opinions, the report states. They are part of a tightly connected belief system linked to what we call left-wing authoritarianism. Trump represents a perfect target for this culture. He's powerful, he's rich, and he's provocative. That puts him on the highest shelf for those who glorify political violence. Trump represents the perfect target. He's powerful, he's rich, he's provocative. All right, that's scary, but needed to be brought to your attention. Oh, there's also a piece, just as an update from last week's program, if you want to find out more. It's coming out of The Guardian, out of the United Kingdom, kind of a left-wing outlet. They have the exclusive of how, allegedly, the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg got added to the White House Signal group chat. Internal investigations cleared Mike Waltz, but the mistake was months in the making. Donald Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, including a journalist, well, loose definition of journalist, in that chat. We know all about it, but the mistake was one of several missteps that came to light in the White House's internal investigation, which showed a series of compounding slips that started during the 2024 campaign and went unnoticed until Waltz created the group chat last month. Trump briefly considered firing Waltz over the episode, more angered by the fact that Waltz had the number of Jeffrey Goldberg than the fact that the military operation discussion took place on an unclassified system such as Signal. But Trump decided against firing him in large part because he did not want the Atlantic and the news media more broadly to have the satisfaction of forcing the ouster of a top cabinet official weeks into the second term. Trump was also informed of the findings of the internal investigation. The disclosure, nonetheless, triggered a forensic review by the White House Information Technology Office, which found that Waltz's phone had saved Goldberg's number as part of an unlikely series of events that started with Goldberg emailed the Trump campaign last October. So you can find that for yourself. That is on, I believe it was Drudge Report this morning. All right, we got to take a short break, wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. So get those last minute comments in, and we will be right back after this.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
No time to go to the gym? The health club is not an option? Come to Hesselson today and see why swim spas and fitness systems can fit into anyone's yard and budget. 12-foot, 14-foot, 15-foot, 18-foot dual temperature hot tub and swim spas are all on display in Hesselson's indoor and outdoor showroom. Try before you buy. 0% interest-free financing options are available on every Hesselson swim spa. Swim and exercise year-round and start making every day better. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
The Fox Sports app isn't just any sports app. It's your sports app.
For the touchdown!
Yeah, yours. Your teams. Your highlights. Your scores. Your stories. Just choose your favorites to get more of what you want.
To the end zone!
And of course, stream your teams live. The best part is free with your pay TV subscription. Grab your
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go through some last-minute comments as we wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. I'm not interested in the hands-off rallies, and personally, I think it's something that downtown merchants ought to consider, as I, for one, steer clear of Market Street when I see this gathering. Maybe they should protest an empty parking lot, since there are plenty of vacant lots, sadly, in Corning. I know the answer, of course. Corning largely promotes this. I'm not sure what it does for business. I wouldn't say that's specifically why I avoided it myself, but I do kind of avoid the large gatherings like that when they're with their signs. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Thanks for supporting that bully Trump. Bullies need love, too. Thank you very much for that comment. Now, Trump is standing by his far-reaching tariffs, calling them over the weekend a beautiful thing to behold as stock futures plummet. They are already in effect and a beautiful thing to behold. The surplus with these countries has grown during the presidency of sleepy Joe Biden. He said on Truth Social yesterday, "We are going to reverse it and reverse it quickly. Someday, people will realize that tariffs for the United States of America are a very beautiful thing." The presidents of the leaders of several countries are calling him and are ready to make a deal with the U.S. while speaking to reporters Sunday evening. "I spoke to a lot of leaders, European, Asian, from all over the world. They're dying to make a deal. But I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that because to me, a deficit is a loss. We're going to have surpluses, or we're at least going to be breaking even." Despite the commander-in-chief's optimism, investors weren't as convinced. But he also said China has been hit much harder than the USA, not even close. They and many other nations have treated us unsustainably badly. We have been the dumb and helpless whipping post, but not any longer. We are bringing back jobs and businesses like never before. Already more than $5 trillion of investment and rising fast, he said. He said that America will win the economic revolution, promising historic results. This is an economic revolution, and we will win. Hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic. We will make America great again, he tweeted out. Jim Cramer warns that it could be a Black Monday scenario. If the president doesn't try to reach out and reward these countries and companies that play by the rules, then the 1987 scenario, the one where we went down 3 days and then down 22% on Monday, has the most cogency. Now, Trump says U.S. will not make a deal with China unless a trade deficit is solved. Secretary Howard Lutnick, U.S. Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick reveals 50 nations have reached out to negotiate tariffs, warn that there is no postponing. There is no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks. The tariffs are coming. He wasn't kidding. The tariffs are coming. Of course they are. While Lutnick did not specify which countries contacted the White House, Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins and White House Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett both reiterated the assertion during separate appearances on Sunday shows. We are out of time. Wow, that went quick. Elon Musk butted heads with Trump over the weekend, saying he wants a zero tariff situation and a free trade zone for Europe amid Trump's trade war. And so they're saying the spat kind of being made in public. Your thoughts on that? Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Americans ready to retire aren't worried about day-to-day market fluctuations. All right, that does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you, everybody who wrote in, all those great comments, all that great discussion. I really do appreciate it, and all the waves as well. We had a lot to cover, and I think we got to most of it this morning. Obviously, tariffs being the big story, but we'll keep you updated on the New York State budget. Sounds like Governor Hochul is in this for the long haul. Claims she is not going to cave and would be willing to vote on the budget even in the summer. That it's beautiful in Albany in the summer, too, saying that there may not be any spring break for the politicians either. So she is standing strong. We'll talk about the budget issues on tomorrow's program, as well as tariffs, the Trump administration, DOGE, all of that and much more. As always, you can reach out to that number on the bottom of the screen 24/7, not just live during the program. If there's any comments that you would like to make after the program, even in the evening or before tomorrow's show, I would love to hear from you on your thoughts of the day. That does it for today. Tune in every weekday morning starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already. Have a great day, everyone.
I have lived here now for 3.5 years. I decided to become an ambassador because I understood how difficult it was for some people to get adjusted. Trying to get people involved in the community so that they could have some friends. I think the worst thing in the world is not to have a friend. So when you come here and you don't know anyone, it's really important that you get them connected with somebody else in a hurry. And so I wanted to make that easier for people when they came in.
Yeah. That's really nice.
Changes.